Welcome back to Grifter or Gifted. Where we try to figure out uh, if you can really separate the visionaries from the con artists.
Right.
Today, we're going to dive deep into the story of Gina Carano.
Okay.
She's been called a trailblazer
Yeah.
and a provocateur, but which one is she really?
Well, what's so interesting about Carano is how her career took such a dramatic turn.
Right.
You know, she went from this celebrated MMA fighter and rising Hollywood star to being fired from The Mandalorian and then facing a legal battle with Disney.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder, was she deliberately courting controversy?
Yeah.
Or did she just stumble into it?
Let's start with her background.
Oh.
Before all the controversy, Carano was a real force in the MMA world. I mean, she had a 7-1 win record.
Wow.
Fought in high-profile tournaments like Showtime Elite XC.
Oh, yeah.
And even became a UFC star.
It's true. She was a pioneer in women's MMA.
Yeah.
Back then, the sport wasn't nearly as mainstream as it is today. And Carano was one of the athletes who helped break down barriers and pave the way for others.
And then she made a pretty seamless transition to Hollywood, starring in action films like Haywire, Fast and Furious 6.
Oh, wow.
And even sharing the screen with Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool.
Her role in The Mandalorian as Cara Dune seemed like her big break.
It did.
She was a fan favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Had her own action figures and merchandise. It looked like she was on her way to becoming a major player in the Star Wars universe.
It really did. And this is where things get interesting.
Okay.
And where that question of grifter or gifted really comes into play. Carano started making headlines for her social media posts. And not in a good way.
Oh, no.
She was mocking mask wearing during the pandemic, expressing doubts about COVID vaccines, and echoing claims about voter fraud in the 2020 election.
Those posts definitely alienated some fans and started raising red flags.
Yeah.
Some people saw it as her exercising her right to free speech, while others saw it as reckless and irresponsible, especially given her platform and influence.
And then came the post that really ignited the firestorm.
Oh, boy.
She shared an Instagram post comparing the treatment of conservatives in the U.S. to the persecution of Jews during the Holocaust.
To be specific, the post said, Jews were beaten in the streets not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children.
Wow.
Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews.
Right.
How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? She deleted the post later, but it was too late. It had already gone viral, and the backlash was swift.
The hashtag #FireGinaCarano started trending.
Oh, wow.
And many people called for Lucasfilm to take action.
Oh.
And they did.
Okay.
Lucasfilm issued a statement calling her posts abhorrent and unacceptable, and announced that Carano was no longer employed by them.
Right.
With no plans for future projects. And her talent agency, UTA, dropped her as a client, too.
The fallout was huge. This wasn't just a minor controversy.
Yeah.
It was a career-defining moment.
It was.
It raises the question, was this a calculated risk on her part? Did she understand the potential consequences of her actions?
Right.
Or did she underestimate the power of social media?
It's hard to say for sure what was going through her mind at the time, but what we do know is that she didn't back down.
Oh, really?
Instead, she filed a lawsuit against Disney and Lucasfilm,
Wow.
alleging wrongful termination and claiming she was targeted for her political views.
Okay.
She's seeking $75,000 in damages and wants the court to force Lucasfilm to recast her in The Mandalorian.
That's a bold move and one that signals she's not going away quietly.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how this legal battle plays out.
For sure.
It could have major implications for how Hollywood handles these kinds of situations in the future.
And this is where another intriguing figure enters the picture.
Okay, who's that?
Elon Musk.
Oh.
He publicly expressed support for Carano and is even financially backing her lawsuit.
Interesting.
Musk has been very vocal about his views on free speech and censorship, especially on social media platforms. So his involvement adds another layer of complexity to this whole saga.
It's almost like two worlds are colliding here.
Right.
The entertainment industry and the tech world both grappling with the same issues of free speech online platforms and the power of public opinion.
Right. And in the middle of it all is Gina Carano.
It seems like it.
So far, a judge has denied Disney's attempts to dismiss the lawsuit, meaning the case is moving forward to trial.
Oh, wow.
This means Carano's legal team can start the discovery process,
Yeah.
which could be very revealing.
Yeah.
They'll have access to internal communications and documents from Disney,
Right.
potentially shedding light on what really led to her firing.
That's a key point. We're only seeing the tip of the iceberg right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to this story that we don't know yet.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
I agree.
We're trying to understand the motivations, the actions, and the consequences of a very public figure who's been both celebrated and condemned.
And ultimately, we're trying to answer that big question.
Which is
Gina Carano a grifter or gifted?
All right.
Is she someone who's skillfully manipulating controversy for her own gain? Or is she someone who genuinely believes in what she's saying, even if it's unpopular or offensive to some?
It's a tough question, and one that doesn't have an easy answer.
It really isn't.
But that's what we're here to explore. So let's dive deeper into the story and see what else we can uncover.
Okay, let's take a look at the reaction from Carano's fans.
Yeah, her supporters have really rallied behind her. They've organized fundraisers to help with her legal expenses and created merchandise with slogans like #StandWithGinaCarano and #FreeSpeechForAll.
Wow.
It shows how deeply people feel about this issue and how divided public opinion is.
It's a reminder that this case isn't just about Gina Carano. It's about fundamental issues that resonate with people across the political spectrum. It's about the boundaries of free speech, the influence of social media on our lives, and the consequences of expressing controversial views.
And it's about the power of narrative.
Absolutely.
How do we separate fact from fiction?
Right.
How do we decide who to believe and who to support?
These are questions we're all grappling with in today's world, and the Gina Carano story is a perfect example of how complex and nuanced these issues can be.
Absolutely. So let's keep digging and see what else we can learn about this fascinating and controversial figure.
Let's do it. One of the most fascinating aspects of this story is how it highlights the tension between personal beliefs and professional consequences, particularly in the entertainment industry.
It's like a high wire act, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Especially in the age of social media where every word you say can be amplified and scrutinized.
Exactly. And for someone like Carano, who had built a career on playing strong, independent characters, this clash between her public persona and her private views created a real dilemma.
So what's next for Carano? Where does she go from here?
Well, she hasn't exactly disappeared from the spotlight.
Right.
In fact, she's leaned into her conservative fan base and has been working on projects with the Daily Wire, a conservative media company.
Okay.
She's producing and starring in their films, which seems to be giving her more creative control and a platform that aligns with her values.
It's an interesting move. It makes you wonder if she's trying to build a career outside of mainstream Hollywood, catering specifically to an audience that shares her views.
It's certainly a possibility. And it speaks to the larger trend of media fragmentation we're seeing today, where people are increasingly seeking out content that confirms their existing beliefs.
So could this be her way of turning controversy into opportunity? Is she using her notoriety to carve out a niche for herself?
It's a strategy that's worked for some figures who've been embroiled in controversy. They double down on their beliefs, appeal to a specific audience, and build a brand around being outspoken or anti-establishment.
But is that sustainable in the long run? Can she maintain a successful career by catering to a niche audience? Or does she risk becoming irrelevant to the wider public?
That's a question that only time will tell. The entertainment industry is notoriously fickle, and success is often a combination of talent timing and public perception.
This case and its implications reach far beyond Gina Carano herself. It's a reflection of the larger societal debates we're having about cancel culture, the power of online mobs, and the tension between free speech and responsible discourse.
It's forcing us to ask tough questions.
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line between personal opinions and professional consequences? How do we handle dissent and disagreement in a world that's increasingly polarized? And what kind of society do we want to create, one that embraces open dialogue or one that silences dissenting voices?
These are crucial questions, and there are no easy answers, but I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about. We've explored the rise and fall of Gina Carano, the controversy that erupted around her, the legal battle that ensued, and the broader implications of this case for society.
I think what's particularly intriguing is that Disney was also developing a live-action series titled Rangers of the New Republic, which could have featured Carano's character.
Wow, I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah.
So even before her controversial posts, there were potentially other plans in motion for her character.
Exactly. And now with the lawsuit moving forward and the discovery phase underway, who knows what might be revealed about those plans? It makes you wonder, would things have played out differently if the controversy hadn't erupted?
That's a great point. It adds a whole new layer of complexity to the situation. And it's a reminder that we're often only privy to a small fraction of the information surrounding these high-profile events.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, but with some crucial pieces still missing.
Well, I guess that just leaves us with even more questions to ponder.
Yeah.
But for now, we'll have to wait and see how the legal proceedings unfold and what new information comes to light. It seems like with each new piece of information, the picture becomes even more unclear.
It certainly keeps us on our toes, and I think that's part of what makes this story so compelling. There are so many layers to unpack, so many different perspectives to consider.
It's a reminder that there's always more to the story than what we see on the surface. And that's why it's so important to stay curious, keep asking questions, and be open to having our minds changed.
I completely agree, especially in this age of instant opinions and social media echo chambers. It's crucial to resist the urge to jump to conclusions.
So let's bring it back to the question we posed at the beginning, grifter or gifted. After this deep dive, where do you land on Gina Carano?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't think there's a simple answer. On the one hand, Carano was undoubtedly a talented athlete and a rising star in Hollywood. She had charisma, she had a strong presence, and she connected with a large fan base.
But on the other hand, her actions on social media were deeply divisive and ultimately cost her a major role in a hugely popular franchise. And her subsequent lawsuit against Disney raises questions about whether she's genuinely fighting for her principles or simply trying to capitalize on the controversy.
It's difficult to say for certain what her true motivations are. Only she knows that. But I think it's fair to say that she's a complex individual with a complicated story. And while she may have alienated some fans, she's also gained a loyal following of supporters who admire her outspokenness and her willingness to challenge the status quo.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's up to each individual to decide where they stand on Gina Carano. But I hope this deep dive has provided some food for thought and encouraged our listeners to engage in these important conversations with nuance and empathy.
I agree. It's easy to get caught up in the outrage and the labels, but it's important to remember that there's usually more to the story than meets the eye.
Well said. As always, you've given us a lot to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope you found this exploration of Gina Carano's story informative and thought-provoking. We encourage you to continue researching, questioning, and forming your own conclusions. Is she a grifter or gifted? That's for you to decide.
Until next time, stay curious and keep asking those tough questions.
And remember, the truth is out there somewhere, just waiting to be uncovered.